Howdy, youngsters. We're looking at section 1.2 and numbers 1 through 7 on your very first assignment in Math Excel. We're just going to be looking at, being able to identify lines, segments, rays, how to do that, looking at words like collinear, non-collinear, planar, and non-planar. We'll also be graphing on a coordinate plane. So number 1 is asking us which of the following is not an appropriate name for the line. So we have to look at, well, what makes an appropriate line. So first is this symbol. So it has to have this symbol. So just by looking at the symbols, we can see that they all have the correct symbol except for this one. But this is also a correct way, or we can have one lowercase letter. So if we look over here at the figure, we can see M over here. So we can call this line M. So that's appropriate. And anytime we have to have two uppercase letters that are, of course, on the line. So R, S, and T. And we can use those in any order. So all of these are appropriate except for this one. It only uses one letter. So think of it as we need one letter to start and we need to go in the direction of another letter. So we're just connecting those. So that's a simple way of being able to identify a line. And then in number 2, we're looking at segments. So that's up here, you're looking at segments. It is identified by having just a line with no arrows and simply two uppercase letters that are, of course, on the line. So we have M, N, O, and P, which means we have to use these letters. So you can say this one has the appropriate line, but Q is not on here, so that's why that doesn't work. This one has an arrow, that is a ray, so that doesn't work. This has an arrow, that is a ray, that is a ray, this is a line. And as you can see here, it has the correct symbol, but Q is not on there. Here, this doesn't have the correct symbol, and this is a ray. So those are examples of rays, lines, and segments. Once again, we're looking at a ray, and ray is the only one, if you look up here at the notes, the order matters. So in a segment, we can write those in any order, as long as those letters are on there. So I could write this as segment OP or PO. The order of it doesn't matter. But when we're looking at a ray, it does matter. So in this way, we look at here, which is the correct ray, where D is the endpoint. So this is where it must start. It's weird to think of it as an endpoint. I like to think of it as a starting point, and we're going in the direction of C. So when we write this as D to C, ray DC, meaning that D is the endpoint, or where we start, and we're going in the direction of C. So that's how we look at identifying rays. Now we're looking at planes. And planes are where we're getting into two dimensions, and so we actually have where we look at lines and segments, and rays are a collection of points that we are connecting. If we look at planes, that's where we're taking lines and we're stretching them across. So if you look here, I have in red planes DCG. And when we identify planes, we're using 3 uppercase letters. If we look in red here, D goes to C, goes to G, which means it also connects to H. And so if we look at this, we see we have like a nice little rectangle here. And we do plane AEH, so we have this going over here. And we can see that they overlap or they intersect at D to H. Now, I know that we're looking at a finite or a measurable space, but we have to keep in mind that these things are infinite. And so even though we could say that, oh, this is a line segment, I shouldn't have arrows on it, we have to keep in mind that these are going on forever unless indicated otherwise. So D and H is where they overlap or where they intersect, and this is the correct way to identify that. Here, it's always important when you're looking at 3D figures or any of these figures to label it or trace it. So it's very easy. I have here in red, and I just simply traced from T, S to R, and I can see I can just simply continue that trend so that these are coplanar, meaning I can simply draw lines between them. And think of it, coplanar means I'm not changing elevation. I didn't go from T to S, R, and then up to V. I think of this as like the floor or a side of the building if we look here. And then also on top here, I can look at this as the top of the building. So we're not changing the elevation from one plane to another. And we can see this is the correct answer. And here we're identifying, taking any 3 points, and we're looking to see if we're including a 4th point, whether or not that is planar or non-planar. coplanar. I'm sorry, coplanar or non-coplanar. And so if we look here, if I connect V, Q, and S, those are indeed coplanar, that's fine. But if I were to go up to T, as you can see, I would have to change elevation. I would have to go up to T. It would have to be everything on this floor or this sheet of paper or however you want to describe that. So if I include T here, it would be non-coplanar. You know, if I use V, Q, S, and R, that would be coplanar. All those, any of these points here, R, Q, S, and V, those are indeed coplanar. Now, if we wanted to include N, we'd have to also make sure that we use things that are on the same plane here. So something that we could draw. So it's a little more difficult, and we'll get into that later. Here we are looking at these coordinate planes, and we're just simply going to plot them. And so keep in mind that this first value is our x value, which is where we'll be moving from left to right. And this is our negative direction, and this is our positive direction. And our y is our vertical direction, and so that'll be our second one. So this will be going up in a positive or down in a negative. So in this first one, this is indeed also the origin, so I put that in blue. Here I am going in a negative x direction to -5, and I'm going up a +1, so that is that point there. And then 6, 2, 6 is the positive for my x, and 2 is the positive for my y, so that is that dot there. As you notice, I don't put two dots. I don't put a dot at -5, and I don't put another dot at +1. Each of those represents a coordinate for one position. So as you can see, I cannot draw a line through all three of them. If I start to connect two dots, I leave one of them out, meaning that they are non-coplanar.